Welcome back. Now, the question of Igbo identity has remained a continuous dialogue, one which will continue this morning with Professor Chidozie Chukwokolo, a development philosopher and Vice President, Ali Igbo Development Foundation. Good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, and God bless you, my viewers.
Good morning. Now, in your view, what would you describe as Igbo identity?
That's a very wonderful question. By the way, the Igbo people are autochthonous, and as it were, we are the aboriginal people, the first that came to Nigeria. But our history is checkered, and as a result, there is even the need at all for the question. Because if we didn't have a checkered history, there would be no need for the question of what do I feel is the Igbo identity. But let me start from our history. We're a group of people that have lived longer than any other person. In fact, some of our research findings are showing that the Igbo are the first people in this planet Earth. And they are documented. They are not just mere discussions. So all the things, the Big Bang theory, the evolutionary theory and all these things, we have those things recorded in our oral tradition. And now people are engaging on those things to understand, why we have this claim. But by the time Britain, well, first of all, the first people who came here were the Portuguese. By the time they came to this place, they were able to, we interacted with them, there was no problem. We were doing trade and all these things. Even the agreement that these people signed, the British people, it was purely that they are going to do trade with us. All of a sudden, there was invasion. So that invasion now uprooted us, such that a lot of our territories got compromised, and the question of who is an Igbo raised itself up. Otherwise, before 1914, we had no problem. The Pubo people, the people from Anioma, even some of our brothers in Cross River, Benue, and Kogi, even up to today, they still identify as Igbo. But immediately that war came, not war at all anyway, the genocide against the Igbo, Operation Kill Everything Igbo. When it came, it became so clear that people had to deny their identity in order to survive. And I don't blame them. They needed to survive. Take for instance, the Igbo Akere people. General Bomudia was in the Supreme Military Council. And when he had the plans of what they wanted to do to Igbo, he went back and told his people, we have to remove the Igbo from our name so that we will not be killed. And that was how Obomedia came back, and their people changed to Banke. And you can see gradually they started changing it. But everything Igbo is there. So the question now, as a rider to what you have said, what are those things that will identify who an Igbo is? And that's part of the reason why a lot of our Christian folks are claiming that we are descendants of God, which is a far cry from what research has shown. In fact, as a person, I was privileged to be part of the arrangement made by the late legendary Dr. Dozie Ikedife when he got some white people who came to Newi for DNA tests. Are Igbos and the Jews, are we the same? Are we related in any way? So he called me. When I came, he said, well, these people are here. I said, Ikenga, I'm not giving my DNA sample because these people are Ashkenazi Jews. They are no longer aboriginal Jews. So they can't be a relation if there is any reason that we have relationship. And I believe we do. But we are the other brothers. And I have my facts. So the question now becomes, what are those things that you have to be an Igbo? Part of it is, one, there are some principles, traditional principles that are embedded in us. For instance, our New Year festival. If you read their Bible also, that's part of the reason why people are saying we are related. When you read their Bible, you see that they have their festivals that help. I was privileged also to attend the last Ofala of Ubi in Emeka Abogidi, and one could see the respect, the Igbo man, how we have evolved very far into embedding our tradition of thanksgiving to our ancestors, to our gods, and to the spring deity that created us. So that's one. There are some others like some of the spiritual principles. Those days, a woman who is observing her period cannot get into the barn. It won't even cook for your husband if the husband is not because there is anything negative about it. No. If you read their Bible, you will see how the Bible also did its best to put it as part of their destiny. So there are so many of such things in Igbo tradition. You see, when an Igbo man, we never met with the Jews, but by the 80th day, a boy will be circumcised when they are given birth to. So there are lots of those things that they saw and say, oh, we are related with these people. And these are the principles, cardinal things that will make you an Igbo. It's not that you are answering an Igbo name. The Igbo man also doesn't believe in killing anybody. No, we don't. And that's why when the Igbo people came here, I remember when they humiliated the then Ezra Obarike in 1912. Ezra Obarike was a half man, half god in terms of influence and powers in the Igbo tradition. He had a lot of influence, he had a lot of things he could do to the white man, basically. I proud myself about my Igbo. I mean, there's a pride I have about my Igbo ancestry, because we are a people that do not believe in shedding blood, and it is fundamental. That's why when you see any Igbo man that started doing that kind of thing, our people will be like, where is he from? Maybe he has a mixed blood. It's not Igbo. So when they did that to Ezra Obarike, he looked at them and said, hey, he thought that these people were on a mission that they would just stay a little while and go. He said, well, he spoke in Igbo. Anya de Igbo mmadụ. Anyị makwa ife anyị ga-eme. Mana iju unu bụ ije unu ga-ana. Ọgaranya ga-ana. And he didn't know that these people were cantankerous. When their Bible said the devil has come to kill, destroy, and one other one is to steal. Exactly the Europeans. That's the most important thing that described them. And that was what they came here to do. So, and unfortunately, they didn't do anything to them, but that was how they took over. So what I'm trying to say is that when you see a people who have these high-level values, you cannot look at Thurston Shaw when he came, when Professor Kenneth Onwukadike, as the Denver Chancellor of the University of Ibadan, invited him to come and do some archaeological research findings about Igbo. If we had been people who kill people or do those type of rituals and all this, the excavations they made, they would have seen those things. What did they see? They saw a lot of things that showed our industry that we had even related with, because some of the beads they saw there in the excavation, they saw similar things in Egypt. So how did these people go to Egypt? There must be a trade link and all those things. So they saw all those things in the chamber that they did the excavation. So the Igbo man has been there and has a lot of these things. And can I shock you? There is nobody. I am on live program. I want any other person to go and prove or disprove me. The Igbo DNA is the oldest that has been found out now. The Igbo, if you go to the iron smelting, I read this man's work, Jared Diamond. He wrote that the 3 factors that changed the world was gun, oil. He said gun, oil and steel. No, gun, gold and steel, something like that. And with the writer that these are the forces that changed human civilization. And there is no evidence that there was any place that iron smelting technology started before Igbo land. And they used their own technology of carbon dating to do that. So it's not like the Igbo man did it himself. They did, and they found out that when they didn't have all these things, we were already doing our iron smelting this thing. So finally, part of the things that identifies an Igbo, so that we go, part of the things that identifies the Igbo man is his industry, Ikenga. Because our people will want you to, what is it that you are doing? Those days, if you come home with money and they don't understand the source of that money, you are not working, suddenly you have money. No, the Igbo man will jettison you. So they lay the emphasis. That's why we used to see in every Igbo man's house, you see the Ikenga, a symbol of rectitude and strength. You don't just get wealth for the sake of it. No, you don't. So that's the Igbo man. That's who we are. So it is not this time that we have developed what Achabe had called the cargo cult mentality, where somebody will say his house and they will expect money to jump from heaven to you. The Igbo man manna never came to this place. We don't believe in manna. You must work hard. So these are the principles that the Igbo man must do to be Igbo.
All right. Now you've been talking about the Igbo before, and you also made mention of the things or the principles that will identify who an Igbo is. So, looking at the core values, do you think that the Igbos currently are still living by those core values and the principles that you mentioned, comparing the Igbo before and the Igbo now?
Well, I have to be frank with you. You know, it's a normal thing that when you have intercultural exchanges, tendencies are there for people to start learning those things that not how do I put it, that are easy. You don't, because these are principles are very sacred, and people were bound by the thing. But when you see something that is this thing, you see that people have the tendencies of drifting. However, there are some few people, and that's what people like us are talking about in Igbo Renaissance, that we must be who we are. We must be who we are. The level of materialism that has come up now is on Igbo. That's not what we used to do. The Igbo man is not this materialistic. But you see, this is where we are now. And there's nothing anybody can do except this cultural revival and renaissance. And unfortunately too, when we had contact with the West and religion came, of course you know, the idea of spirituality came. Christian religion started priding itself as superior to the Igbo traditional religion. And unfortunately, that is where we are. And some of the adherents of the Igbo traditional religion are also not helping matters, because they have gotten to a level of materialism that is too bad for the core values of Igbo. So somebody, I can tell you that there's a lot of drift in the core values. But over and above that, we are still trying to do our best to ensure that we keep to those core values that make one an Igbo.
Right, now just to get you to expand further on this, because earlier on you spoke about that the Igbos were fine before 1914 when we had the Portuguese and then the British, Europeans generally coming to our country. And influence our Igbo tradition. So I want to ask, decades after we would say that as a country we are independent of the European, you know, colonialism. But how would you say that that point in our lives as Nigerians, how would you say that that shaped or reshaped Igbo identity and how Igbo see themselves and their way of life in Nigeria?
First of all, the Portuguese people didn't come in 1914 or all those things. Even Britain didn't come by that period. The British people came here. If you know your history, you know that there was what they call the Anglo-Arrow War.
I said before 1914.
No, I want to make that one look clearer because we need to understand the sequence. I think it was even in 17 something that the Portuguese came and they had business deals here. There was no problem. It was when guns were discovered. Oh yeah, I was talking about Gary's book. Gary was talking about gun, gems, and steel as the factors. So when the Igbo people discovered guns, I mean especially Europeans that didn't start it, they didn't have this, but when they saw that guns could kill people, you can use it to conquer others. Their value system was not of conquest, so they came to conquer us. And so when they came, it was their business was conquest, and they did even ideologically, because the worst was that ideological conquest where you can see somebody, I don't know whether you have ever seen, you will see somebody who is sick and terminally too, and they will tell you, no, take this herb, you can be cured if you take it. You say, no, I'd rather die than take the devil's herb that God created and gave knowledge about it. So that level of decay was part of, you can see how the thing has messed up our identity. That's one. Two, after the main point of our challenge was during that period of the genocide and post-genocide, the Igbo man was in his golden place before 1967. From 1967 to 1970, when the attempt at killing us at that genocide didn't work, there was other ways that we started suffering. And that's where the question of our identity came. Who are the Igbo again? The Igbo persons started seeing all kinds of, challenges in terms of their identity. However, when they are talking of independence, I doubt whether we are as independent as we claim, because there are so many things that our people don't take decisions of. Look at what is going on now, the way we are looking at that America says they will no longer allow terrorists kill Christians in Nigeria. If you are talking about level of independence, we can be internationally recognized as a sovereign nation. No other sovereign nation can you go to America to discuss that way about them. But these checks and balances are very important, because if we don't have such things, some of our leaders here will be doing all sorts of things that nobody can ever imagine. So I don't think we have that level of independence. We only have full flag independence. But in terms of certain operations, we don't have it. And so when somebody lays foundation, a certain level of foundation, about ideological foundation, you will see that look at now, if you have a child and from childhood you put certain values. When I was doing my youth service, I saw a lot of very good, I served in the north, I saw a lot of very good Muslims. But I was asking myself, so I am a Christian because I was born into a Christian environment and the ideology infused in me. The Muslim was born a Muslim, the ideology infused in such a Muslim from childhood. So you can see that once you're able to put that in at the foundational level, it will be difficult to erase. That is the challenge we're having now. But with proper information and knowledge, you will see that over the period, we'll be able to reclaim those our high, long-tested values that make us Igbo.
All right. Now, do you think that the Igbo nation has an agenda currently? Because this is a modern era, and some will say that we are not united, and some don't even have an agenda, and since we cannot exist independently, that there is no unity. So with that, do you think that we have a common agenda?
Who has a common agenda in Nigeria? The Igbo man is the most united person or people in Nigeria. The only problem that we have is our leadership. But below the leadership, down to the sins of us, we're so united. And so when people say those things, I laugh, because these are the kind of things that they tell you in order to divide you more. We are not as divided as they are claiming. The only problem we have is that our politicians are not. Our politicians don't understand us, and I don't blame politicians. What politicians do is that all the time they just come to win elections, and so whatever that can help them to win elections are what they do. But in terms of agenda, anybody who is saying we are not united don't know the Igbo. The way the Igbo man does, and the Igbo man has his leaders. But our own challenges of our egalitarian nature, what normally happens is that we do our things and people keep going on until, if for any reason you have existential threat and challenges, a leader will emerge. That's how we have been doing. In 1927, I think so, I hope I'm correct, when Nnamdi Azikiwe came back from US after training, and he lived some few months in Ghana and came back when he formed the West African Pilot, and he came back here. He saw that we faced existential threat, and he mobilized to the extent that he was a god, a demigod at the point, so that if you want to say anything that is serious, you will say that Zeke said it. But you see, after independence, and we have our challenge again when the pogrom started in the north and the genocide, and Ojukwu emerged. And this is how the Igbo man has always gone. So those who say all these things don't understand that, and that's why the challenge will keep staying or being that way, because the West, who have tried to understand us, especially Europeans, they can't understand us. I can shock you by revealing to you that anthropology was set up in order to understand the Igbo. Have they been able to succeed? They have not. It's just for the university. That's how the course anthropology started. Have they been able to understand us? They have not. And that's the challenge we have. When somebody comes, he looks at the kind of leadership we have in some parts of Nigeria, monarchical structure, and that person comes up to say, this is how it should be. He would think the Igbo people are like that. You can't. So, for me, we organize and we have our agenda. And that's so. If we don't have those who are saying we don't have agenda, if we don't have agenda, why are those people always saying you can't trust the Igbo man to give him power? If you give him power, he will secede. Even though secession is not our agenda, but on that lighter level, you can see that at least they know we have. They think we have an agenda. They are just saying those things in order for you to continue to think you are not organized. Let us face a very serious existential threat now, and we see how the Igbo man will, the leadership will emerge, and we go on. God has always been our leader, and He is, and will always continue to lead us.
Now, how would you assess Igbo development so far, and what would you say is the link between our development and preservation of our identity?
Well, it depends on what you call development. I don't know whether you are talking of infrastructural development.
Generally, as a people, as Igbos, our development so far, how far we've gone, both in infrastructure and all other aspects.
Igbo people are the most developed on earth. How do you assess that? There's no place on earth you will see an Igbo man. If in Antarctica people live there, you will see an Igbo man. How does it dovetail to development? They'll come back here, bring what they have experienced there, and implant them here, and advance it. And that's why you see the kind of things you will see. No matter how remote you think a village is, you will see people who are really developmentally in that sense of development. So, and what is important to me is that level of mental development that we have. That is what I call real development for Igbo, and we are very high about that. I'm not saying because I'm Igbo. If you meet anybody who is objective anywhere, I read something, I don't know whether it is true, that they attributed to Fayoshe. He was saying that Igbo are not, they are very powerful people, but they are not using their destiny. That where they live in Nigeria, if they decide now that they are going to win, that they can win because they live everywhere in Nigeria, which is true. Forget about the thing they do about messing up our, manipulating our population. The Igbo people are the most populated ethnic group in Nigeria, and they know it. Because any community will come, the Igbo people, the population in some few communities, the Igbo population will be competing with the indigenous people's population. And there's no place we don't have such things in Nigeria. Yet people will do all these things, they call their census, figure out and allocate to us whatever they like to do. But be that as it may, we are mentally, psychically and psychologically very developed. And that is development for me. The infrastructural one is not as big as that. And still, we are infrastructurally very developed. Because if you remember what happened during this MBA conference, some of those people who came were surprised at what they saw in Enugu. Because if you go to a lot of these places, there are few cities or towns that are developed there. But go to Anambra now. Is there any Anambra city that is not developed at that point? And even if you go to the other states, okay.
All right, now let's take a deeper look into the political structure when it comes to Igbos. Do you think that currently the political representation of the Igbo people within Nigeria's federal structure has a balance?
Well, I don't like to discuss politics at that point because politics is a game of who gets what, how, where, and the sharing of allocation. The Igbo man, the last time an Igbo man was head of state was in 1966. And you know what it is, especially the kind of political atmosphere you have in Nigeria. So, you can't be balanced as you are thinking. You can never, because especially from Buhari's era to date, where what people are doing just simple, get power, empower your people only. So it can be. However, for me, these things are gradually done. The representation will come if we negotiate. Politics is all about negotiation, you know. So that's why I don't want to go deeper than that.
Now, looking at the current generation and the young people that we have now, do you think that the youths are conscious of their roots as Igbo people and have this consciousness of Igbo identity, looking at our society as it is today?
Well, it depends on who the youth is. If the youth has proper foundation, why not? You can't be another person. You must be yourself. But if you don't have that proper identity, that's where roots and orientation, foundation, that's where you will have that challenge. But I think that a lot of our youth understand who they are. And in this understanding of who they are, they are trying to identify themselves. But you see, these things are evolving, because once you interact with other people, that interaction will influence you reasonably.
All right. Now, finally, before we go, what do you think are the existential misconceptions of the Igbo identity? Any misconception? General weakness?
There are so many misconceptions by non-Igbo people. In the first week of September, I went to give a keynote a lead paper presentation in former Benue State University, now Father Dasu University. And one of the things I discovered was that there were a lot of name calling. Those people were telling me how their parents talked to them about who the Igbos are. But that they found out that the Igbo people are not what they were claiming that they were doing. And so we have some misconceptions too about other tribes. If you come to Yoruba man, we say Igbo man is a Jokuta Momi. He can swallow stone and he won't drink water. Such hard they say. And so other people are like that. So there are these misconceptions about tribes that people have. But be that as it may, I don't think that they have anything to do with us. The only thing we can solve in Nigeria, if we want to, is the problem of ethnicity. And that's from that point we go and get better.
Okay, Professor Chidozie Chukwokolo, thank you for joining us this morning and for your opinion on the continuous dialogue of Igbo identity. Thank you.
I appreciate you people for calling me. And we will continue to do our own little bits to sensitize our people to know who they are. I'm a proud Igbo man because my ancestry has a lot of things to share to the world.
Thank you.
We have done well. Thank you.
Thank you. And that's where we'll leave it this morning from our end. But don't go anywhere, as we'll be bringing an interview from our Abuja studios for your viewing pleasure. I am Uchenna Chimdi Olwoha.
And I am Lilian Wani. Have a great watch.